We've heard a lot of talk about possible trades concerning the Cubs. Pete Alonso of the Mets, Juan Soto of the Padres. They would both come at a significant price. Well, how about this? Bo Bichette of the Blue Jays, and he's got 2 years left on his deal. We're going to talk about that and the possible reunion of a World Series champion Cub. Thank you for hanging out with us here on the Cubs baseball channel. If you're not part of our roster, if you're a free agent, hey, we would love to have you. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you like Cubs baseball. Let's talk about the Cubs. What do you say, guys? Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to the Cubs baseball channel. I'm Mick Gillispie. You can follow me at Broadcaster Mick on Twitter and other places. All right, let's get into this right now because I've been kind of sitting here contemplating if this was a real possibility, and that's the Cubs making a trade with the Blue Jays to get Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette, son of Dante Bichette, a major leaguer, really good player. Bo was one of the top prospects in baseball, came up and he's delivered. Last year, look at the numbers. 306 batting average, 20 home runs, 76 runs batted in. And even though he plays shortstop, you slide him over and play third, and all of a sudden you got a damn good infield, at least with Dansby Swanson and then Nico Horner. Who knows who you're going to play at first at this point? And here's where the spark of this smoke is coming from. It's coming from Jon Morosi, who's really good, and he says Bo Bichette is practical for the Cubs if they're comfortable with playing him at third because they have a number of top 100 prospects. Okay, well, the Cubs do, and why would a trade with Toronto be something that is possible? Well, first off, because they have the ammo to do it. Secondly, because, the Blue Jays might not be able to sign him in a couple of years. Who knows? Toronto made the playoffs last year in the toughest division in baseball with the Red Sox and the Rays and the Orioles and the Yankees. And then they didn't do too well, right? And it's not saying that it's Bichette's fault, but, hey, it could be one of those deals where you feel like, hey, maybe we shuffle the deck a little bit and we get younger, and the Cubs have the talent to do that. Well, the reason why this really intrigues me, and I heard Morosi say it, is Owen Caissie. Okay, Owen Caissie is the Cubs' third highest rated prospect. He's a top 100 prospect. He's also from Canada. So he would be kind of a hometown guy who grew up in Canada, as one of the best players. He's the highest drafted outfielder in Canadian history. He was drafted by the Padres and then traded to the Cubs for Yu Darvish. He was in Double-A this year as a 21-year-old and was in the top of the league in everything. Home runs batted in, extra base hits, slugging. I mean, he does it all. Total bases. He plays a really good right field. And the Cubs have a right fielder in Seiya Suzuki. Not to say that Caissie is going to be there next year knocking on the door, but not saying he's not. I don't know. I just know that he had a fantastic season in Double-A with the Smokies, and he'll be in Triple-A Iowa this year. But he's a big left-handed bat that moves really slickly, if that's even a word, in the outfield. He the way that he moves for a big guy reminds me of Anthony Rizzo, like who I used to call Twinkle Toes. Just the way he would just move around first base, just kind of glide it to spots. And I see the same in Owen Caissie. He's a very mature guy for his age. And if you're Toronto, you may say, hey, you know what? If we're trying to sell tickets, we would love to have someone from Canada who we could maybe help continue to build this franchise around. And what's really intriguing about Caissie is not only is he from Canada, but he spent his offseason this year working with Canadian youth baseball teams just to try to get those guys more exposure. So think about that. He's a guy that takes a lot of pride in being Canadian and, kind of pushing the game of baseball. So maybe there's a fit there, and it's a risk if you're the Cubs, but I'll tell you what, getting Bo Bichette back it's a pretty good reward. I mean, this guy can play. I mean, twice he's led the league in hits, which I think is significant. And I know that there's people in the analytic world that don't value hits, like people like me that are kind of old school. 2021, he had 191 hits, came back in 2022, and he had 189. He still had 175 hits. So in 5 years, he's already at 653. I mean, this is the making of a guy that could get 3,000 hits and have a Hall of Fame career. He's gotten votes for MVP the last 3 seasons. And, the power, it's not bad. 89 home runs in 528 games. You slot him over at third. And if you're the Cubs, I mean, the problem with this is if you make this deal, who goes to the Blue Jays or who do you get rid of, right? You drafted Matt Shaw, your first round pick. He's a shortstop. Well, he's not going to play shortstop because you got Swanson and now Luis Vazquez. So maybe you play him at third. B.J. Murray was the MVP of the Double-A Championship Series. He's really good. It was in the Futures game. You got other guys that can play third. I still think Jake Slaughter could play some third base. We saw him do that a couple of years ago, and he put up the power numbers again in Iowa, although I don't know if he's on the Cubs' radar or not, but, hitting 25 home runs and driving in near 100 runs is important to you. That's what that guy did. So you got other options there. And then if you sign Bichette, well, then you're putting basically a roadblock over at third, right? But, I mean, that's why you have the prospects to be able to go make deals and get bona fide players at the major league level. And that's what this deal would look like. So it's interesting to say the least. Morosi said in an article that I saw that the Cubs were, looking at this for a second year. So that tells me that he's someone that they've had on the radar already. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. But it's the first time I've heard of Bo Bichette as a possibility to the Cubs, but a really good player and would be a great piece for this team as they try to move forward. Here's the other one I wanted to talk about today, and that is from Bleed Cubby Blue. Love those guys, and they do a fantastic job. We've had Al Yellen on the show before. I saw this one and I thought this right here will make Cubs fans cringe, right? Jason Heyward back to the Cubs. Last year he was with the Dodgers and he actually had a pretty good season as the fourth outfielder in LA, right? So he's available. Would you bring him back? A couple of Gold Gloves in the outfield for Heyward when he was with the Cubs, but a lot of people feel like that contract that he signed was one of the big ripoffs that the Cubs have had in franchise history. So, is that fair? Because he obviously would make a small fraction of that if he came back. But I just feel like we've seen that and the movie's played and everybody's kind of moved on from this. We were talking about Jorge Soler signing a deal with the Cubs last year. And to me, that seems more realistic than Heyward. All of those years that Heyward was with the Cubs and, how many weak ground balls to second base can one guy hit, right? And that's how Cubs fans feel, and I think everyone appreciates him. Somebody's going to get in the comment section and they're going to go, if you tell me about the clubhouse speech during the rain delay, Mick, one more time, I know. And if you watch Marquee, you would think that it happened yesterday. They play that stuff all the time. We're kind of in a time warp with the 2016 World Series. But look, it's still a World Series champion. And before that, we didn't even know we were ever going to have one before. So we should never stick our noses up at that team and that moment and everything else. The problem is that you got to move forward from it. And I feel like if it was me, the last thing you want to do is take up a roster spot for Jason Heyward. Mike Tauchman is same type of player. You got Pete Crow Armstrong looking for a spot. You got Alexander Canario, who's going to be fighting for a spot. Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki. There's no room for Jason Heyward anywhere on the roster. And if the Cubs made this signing, which I don't think they will, but if they did, it would be just like when they signed Eric Hosmer last year or Trey Mancini, or you're just going, no, this just doesn't fit. When you go out and you sign guys, you want to sign a guy like a Bellinger, somebody where you see a huge upside and you go, hey, man, if this guy figures it out, boom. And not to say that you're going to ever run into another situation like Bellinger again, where a former MVP struggling like that. It really was the perfect storm and a great job by the Cubs to get him. But you just want guys that if you're going to bring somebody in that is kind of in that, in that ilk, and you're going to block your young players, you want there to be an enormous upside. And with Jason Heyward, I just don't see it. A great guy, but not someone that I would add on this roster. All right, guys, have a great Thanksgiving. If anything breaks, obviously, you know where to find us. We'll be right here to cover it. And I want to ask you guys to do a solid as well and check out the Tennessee Smokies team store, smokiesbaseball.com/store. It's where I got this. They gave me this right here. And they've got great gear. They won their first title in 45 years, 1978. And then it took 2023, 45 years to get another championship. So they've got the store, they got the swag, and they want you to go check it out with the holidays coming up. So however you celebrate, Cubs fans love good gear, and they got it for you there at the Smokies team store.